go back now to our action. And one of the factors that we have to clarify and solve, given some time and logistics limitations, people being fathers and mothers and having to further studies to do, what we're going to do during these days is until 6, try to communicate some information and then go on a break. And during the last 30 to 40 minutes, try to debate some themes or to clarify some doubts that might have to do with what we're going to see during the next day. So this is what we're trying to do. People abroad, you know that this is not a time to transmit new knowledge, but to debate, to clarify some things, and to speak a little bit about the Benfica, the Portuguese football club. Now, I've created some movements, some reactions now. I'd like to say something else. We have 7 simultaneous places in Europe being members of this training, one of them being Italy, with 3 or more participants, which is an evidence of the current globalization, which we thank for. And we try to ask you to participate a little bit more. I think we have some contributions already that Joanna is going to transmit to us. And if we want to add something, me or you, please feel free to add some information given by our training colleague. Can I throw it? We should have a thread here to be able to throw away the microphone. The question is as follows: would it be possible to discuss the impact of the national policies in roads, ports, and transport, and the new role of the port authorities in the new globalized economy? Then he also added that it would be important to see how the port communities and the PMEs can influence the policymakers, that is, they're responsible for creating new policies, so as to give new competitive advantages to the country, for example. Well, we're now going to discuss these 2 themes to begin. So, coming up, the first theme was, can you repeat please, Joanna? Discuss the impact of national policies in terms of transport. National policies in terms of global transport and globalization. Yes, and their impact in a globalized economy. It's an important theme. Basically, in what political measures, the management of the maritime transport can be a factor for the different economies. That is, in what way does the management of the processes of entrance and exit and the easiness of its administrative depth can be an advantage. Well, this is my opinion, but other people can have different opinions. The main question here is to know which are the competitive spaces in which each economy of each state mainly competes, which are the competitors, which are the championships in which we are. When we are competing to the establishment of an industry that had another European country as a source, so to say, the factor of investment incentive here in Portugal has to do with a lot of different indicators. The time we take to unload, the time we take to make a dispatch ready, how many time we take to make licenses, to do sanitary fiscalizations, and other factors. So one of the operational papers of operational roles is the efficiency of the logistic services in terms of administrative treatment, port treatment, and customs treatment as well. There's here a very important, very obvious competition factor. That is, if our services of official character, of all the products that have to go through the brokers, through the ports, we have a factor that is less favorable to the fixation of economic activities in our country. For example, here in Port Leixões, we can be competitors of the port of Aveiro, of Sines, because there are competitive logistics in the ports, in the different ports in the same country. So, of course, a country with a coast that is quite large, as the Portuguese coast, and with the dimensions and the characteristic of ours, has to be able to develop competition and collaborative advantages between the ports. And so we cannot destroy the value of other ports of the country to have some profit, but to develop the general ports of the country, to develop the business in the country in general. So these factors of operational capacity, the time we take to dispatch a container and to help a ship exit, these technical skills, the operational skills of a set of methods and men, all these are factors of competitiveness that have to do with a logistic management that has to be done in time, without malfunctions, without losses, without accidents. And then we have a more institutional component that is more directed to services, which means that good services by the freight forwarders and the corresponding articulation and adhesion of public services in this process. So this is a key question here. The second point, and I hope I understood what I was saying, the competitiveness factor is the quality, the operational technical quality of the port and of the companies that are specialized in those kind of services, and it's something completely different to speak about the help that the administrative component can bring. And then there's the question of the port. I don't want to be involved in things that don't have to do with me and that other colleagues are going to discuss. But speaking about the LSW, that represents administrative solutions that facilitate the dispatch times in terms of logistics and in terms of administration that Portuguese ports and other European ports try to follow and want to achieve in their initiative politics. The second point, Juan, was how the SMEs and the port community can help us adopt new policies. Well, this doesn't apply just to ports. It has to do with seeing how the companies, whether they're small or big, are efficient in the way they communicate their message, basically. This is a very large theme, and it depends a lot on the maturity of the sector that is involved here. That is, if we're speaking about an organization such as CAP, that the Portuguese Agricultural Confederation, it can reach to national and European political organs very easily, and other SMEs, for example, that use ports to import and export goods might not be able to do the same thing. But this has to do with the maturity of the process of the company association, or the combination of an industry and an entity that provides services, such as those who work in the port area or by the port. There's not much more to say about this. I hope that Elio was a bit more satisfied, or that he might add other questions or other suggestions, other interventions from our colleagues abroad. No more interventions. That being said, I would like you to start by answering the questions that I asked. what is your vision of what is logistic management, and what is your vision on supply chain management? I want to begin on that subject. No, Gonçalo. I'm sorry, we are not getting sound in the booth. Just a minute, please. So logistics. Logistics is a set of operations. It's the first thing that occurred to me. Well, that's not enough to distinguish it. There's other things that are a set of operations and that are not related to logistics. Logistics is a set of operations, but of what kind? Is it production? No. Is it support? Support to the production. It can occur before the production or during the production and after it. Logistics is, as you may understand and say it, the management of physical fluxes of goods, informative fluxes of goods, and financial fluxes of goods. Other contributions. What is logistics? Logistics is going to generate raw materials, movement of raw materials, movement of finished products, of partial products, of complementary products. For example, logistics is going to operate for this bottle. It's going to find the plastic to make the bottle, the paper to make the label, the plastic to make the lid, the ink, the spot where the water is going to be collected, because it's not always found where it is embottled, and so it has to identify the process of transport of the water, and then it's going to find the forwarder who's going to bring the water to the client, to the consumer, or to the to other actors of the manufacturing process. We're going to find exactly where the water is going to be kept, because it might not go directly to suppliers. So all of this has to do with logistics. If we look there, I'm going to read it because it might not be too easy for you to see. We have activities that are associated to logistics, to make orders to the furniture, to the suppliers. We also have the aggregate planning of production in cooperation with the production management. That is the result of a collaboration with marketing and other areas. The management of stock of raw materials, subsidiary products, packing materials. The logistic and information systems support the maintenance, the inventory management, the packing. All of these are operations that are related to logistics. But logistics also does it with this concern: to improve the services level, the costs, to reduce the risk and the uncertainty and the floating capital, to reduce the logistics chain time cycle. What do you believe can be this logistics chain time cycle? I'm going to erase this, and I'm going to give you a challenge to you and to people abroad. We're going to build a case study. So imagine you are a producer: a pair of shoes, a bag, a toothbrush, a television, a bottle of water, whatever you want. And I would like you to imagine, I'm going to make here a little drawing to guide you. You're going to be here where there is a production unit. And the challenge is to find the logistics cycle. That I'm going to call pipeline instead. logistic pipeline. And you're going to have to find for this what is going to be necessary and from whom for your production and what you are going to do to reach the final client. Each of you is going to imagine a simple, complex activity, whatever you choose. It can be production or it can be providing a service as well. It can be a shop, it can be a hairdresser. You have to identify the S for suppliers, which are your suppliers that are going to generate input to your activity for you to develop your production and for you to make then an output of your production to the final customer. So this is the side box, that is the identification of the supplier, of the input of the supplier for our production, the output of our activity for the consumer, which might be multiplied by 100 at a scale, of course. And we can have here many suppliers and also suppliers. I just want something simple. Do not create a too complicated process. And don't go get caviar from Russia or Iran. Just imagine a logistic cycle, and imagine the time that it would take for you to go from here to there. And for having this time, you have to have a notion of who you're going to get involved in this notion. For example, you as custom brokers and as freight forwarders, you're often part of this process. You can be there if you're buying products or raw materials that require some forwarding or that require some customs breaking, or after the production as well. Am I being clear? So imagine a product, but you're now the managers of the production. You are the managers of the main activity. Is everything clear? Is everything clear, Joanna? 5 minutes for this? Is it okay? Is it enough? 5 to 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I'm not going anywhere, so.
So let's do it. Who wants to kick off? Please, don't forget the microphone. Miguel is so quiet, so please. Well, I used the case of a freight forwarder, but we have three different agents, client and private client. So please choose one, the easier one. Our agents, we receive the requests. We already give them the quote, so we will only follow with the request. So we need to produce, make it operational. And so the input is generated by our agent, right? Who? The agent. So is that it? Exactly. Then you place a request of a service, of a transport. And what do you need for this transport requirement? You need all the elements. Where is it going, how it arrives, and everything that comes inside. I can say description of the goods. And for that production, what do you need more? You have the data already, you have the request, and what do you need to produce the service, which is what? What is a service? It's transport. From where to where? It can come to Portugal or not. It can be to A to C without B, which is us. Okay, so your production is a transport of a product or products from one point to other points, coming to Portugal or not. So what you need to do is to adequate the transport structure that can be a vessel more truck and railway, and more storage. It can be everything, right? For you to produce, you need to have a set of other suppliers. This request that the first agent places makes you develop outputs that will make mandatory for your suppliers to give you input for you to produce, right? So one input will generate from your part a request of several other activities, other supplies, right? Okay, please keep going. After all those elements, have the request of the elements, we will continue with the transaction of the goods to know where can I load it, and the day of exit and the day of arrival. The client is our agent. So this way you are working on the main logistical attributes. What are the principal? It's a deadline. It's the right product. Please memorize this at the right time, at the right place, on the right conditions, safety and quantity, and to the lower cost possible. This is simple. This is valid for the most complex chain. Not only just in time, is more than just in time. Because I can have just in time with high price. And I would like to tell you about this concept. Just in time is not quick. Just in time is in the accorded time. Time can be 6 months. It was a defined time. In the auto industry, they use it just in time. But just in time has long-term delivery. When you have cycles of orders of an engine, you will not order one engine. They have strong orders for 300 engines, for example. And it goes for the factory Y or J. Just in time, it's the accorded deadline. So one of the management of waste in the industrial activity, this may seem ridiculous, is a product that arrives early, because all the product that comes early will generate needs for storage, additional storage, that can not be space near the factory. So we need to hire someone that can sell us storage, and this has a cost. Just in time, just to make it clear, is in the agreed schedule in order to have the smaller inventories as possible. One thing is the circulating inventory and the other is the fixed. Just in time is not fast or quick. Here you have transport companies that that are called jets, to give them the idea that they are urgent. To do everything at the same time is not logistic requirements. The right product at the right time, at the right place, the right conditions regarding quality, safety, to the lower unit cost possible, because that's a factor of competition. It's a global factor of competitiveness. This shirt or that shirt we produced in Portugal or Italy, one of the factors that it shows is that a set of parcels that constitute cost can be the lower set possible result of the lower cost of each parcel, where the logistic cost is very important, because the logistic cost regarding the sector can be 5% of the final price or 40%. This will depend on the industry and the sector we are involved in. When we add logistic cost, it's not the last step, because we have the notion of thinking of the logistic cost as less transport, forgetting that when the shirt is made, there are a series of logistic inputs: transport of raw material, or materials for packing, for labeling, storage of products, management of buying processes. These are logistic costs, okay? Is this clear? Yeah, do you want to say something? We have risk assessment, but if they are not agents, we can have a risk assessment because we are not interested in having a transport if we are receiving less than we paid, which is the guarantee that we have of the freight being charged, right? An activity, a level activity of production is a production of the assessment of risk in order to decide if they will have or not. If we don't receive, we will have great problems. Okay, Gonçalo, I tried to make this complete. I have a company that has a train that produces cork. It extracts cork from trees. First step to extract cork, and then it sells to a company that works on cork itself, umbrellas, whatever. This company that works with cork sells it to a customer or client in the United States, already transformed in bags, in umbrellas, and they have a quote to a freight forwarder to know the price of the transport, and that freight forwarder already asked an air company values for this export. From here on, the client agrees with the order, confirms this is a C element of that chain, because we have A, B, C, D, and E. Then the freight forwarder needs to confirm the air company that will have some space and export. When the client in the United States receives the goods, will distribute it in its stores. Okay, there are other agents, the freight forwarder, to make the transport. For the loading, he will have a local carrier. There will be a correspondent that will make sure of the movement of the goods using a customs broker and a carrier, and then it will get to the home of the client E, right? We saw all the cycle of the chain. Of course, by the time it will distribute with its own fleet, because it's a big company, it will distribute it in its stores, to which it will be the access to the final client. So we are involving at least 8 non-public entities, removing customs, inspection authorities in one side and the other. We are just having private entities here. This is all the logistics cycle. When someone is in the United States preparing a campaign because it will have a promotion of umbrellas, for example, for winter, in Cork, made in Cork, they need to take into account the logistic time, 1 day, a week, 3 months, 2 months. So it's important to know that just in time is not. And that specific time is the adequate time for the campaign. It's good that the United States, they have the umbrellas, whether he can consider the right time to have a catalog photos, good promotion and distribution of the product. So that calculation of the different times and costs that we call the logistics cycle, the complete logistics cycle that involves the physical flow of the goods that circulate to all these entities, information cycle, which is before, during, and after the transport of the goods, and the financial ones, because if one have an account, others don't, and they demand for an advance payment. So is this clear? So in order to have a strong competitive capacity, these circuits need to be working very well, because any delay can compromise the launching of the campaign of umbrellas in Cork, in New York, in Chicago, in Baltimore, in Philadelphia. So any delay can compromise all the efforts. Please see how much will the logistics cost in the umbrella. The unit cost of the factory is 5. Maybe when we get to the unit cost of 5, of the information, physical, came from 5 to 10, 30. Because somewhat in Alentejo, to a city far away in the American continent. So please, anything else? Okay, please, Vasco. Well, here I represent a publicity agency in which I'm contacted by another entity that wants to produce a magazine in order to promote a product that that company is producing, that wants to send it abroad to a representative that it has in other countries. So I get the request. From here on, within the client, I have themes and information that I want to place in that publication or magazine. I have interviews with intervenants also. I have the text analysis and reviews, the assembly, because within the different departments, they need to have the text, photographs, and all these things. From here on, I will contact a graphic company that will be in partnership with me, where we have together with the client different types of paper, final framing also. And from here on, together with the graphic company, we'll have the printing and finishing, that the graphic already had the paper from the paper supplier in the previous step. And so from here on, after we have everything finalized, there is it's put in pallets, there is a storage also. We will frame the component of the transport also. That needs to be a road carrier. And then we have the consolidation of the truck, the transport, and the arrival to the final client. Well, we are repeating the model. I don't want to tire you with example. It's not like a curiosity. What Patricia George said, but we have the fundamental points here. The logistic pipeline basically doesn't change a lot in its basis net structure. What happens is that the complexity can increase and can have a logistic pipeline of a product that only has 2 cycles, repeating 2 times in the other, and we can have some that are repeating 10 and 20 times more. So the logic is of the logistic pipeline, which is a tool of production that is to find what we call the epochs of the production of a process, which is who are the suppliers of a certain input that it's important that will generate n outputs and exits for clients. So this is repeated. A factory in its production, it's making this a lot of times. So we have the cork and it's adapted to the bottle, but before we need to put water in that. Each one of them is the cycle of production and of activity. In the logistic process, we need to find what are the epochs which are the main logistic pipelines. And why is this important? Because this must be associated to a maturity of processes. So, because one thing is for me to have suppliers here who are mature. What do I call a mature supplier? It's a supplier that I place the order of cork. Who spoke about cork was Gonçalo. And then the supplier, the one who extracts cork, if I say that I want 30 tons on a factory on the 15, they will get there. But the maturity of that supplier regarding the deadline of delivery for him to find with me, he always fulfills. But I can have an additional need because this supplier's capacity only has 30 tons. But for an international one, maybe we can use 30 tons, which is different. That's not the thing, but that's how we work in Portugal. You can have an additional need of 10 tons more. Those 10 tons need to go to a B supplier, but imagine that that B supplier in the deadlines is not a 5, it's a 4, a 3. Because what does it mean? 4 can mean frequently, 3 sometimes, 2 rarely, and it doesn't fulfill deadlines. So if you are to assess the maturity of my supplier, I will see that I can have the order 30 days away, which is a time for me to gather production and deliver it to me. And for the B supplier, because it's 30 days in delay, I can have to make my order at the same time I make the A one, or do I have to make 30 days first? I'm just making it simple deliberately, okay? The logistic pipelines are important. We are doing what we call a map of the logistic process with the names that are graphically here in concrete cases in the wall, to have the graphic components with squares, rectangles. We can put a picture of our partner there, identifying what are their main problems. A partner that delivers it late with a lot of defects, or a partner that fulfills the deadline, but it doesn't have the logistic attributes of the right conditions, the quality that I'm looking for. I will work with more difficulties. So this is important to have the identification of the logistic pipelines to create what is called the assessment of the logistical risk in order to identify the potential factors of risk of unfulfillment of some of the logistic criteria of some of the attributes, time of delivery, quality of the delivery, price, okay? Because all of them will have influence in the unit cost. Is this clear? This is not meant to be beautiful. We don't have a map of the logistic process to be beautiful. We do it to identify the weaker points, the constraints, the risks that are associated to that chain, because not all logistic processes are bulletproof. Not all logistic processes are infallible. They have bigger or smaller maturity. The assessment of the maturity process of an activity, of a specific process, is to identify the probability of risk. And if it happens, what it impacts the activity. The risk analysis, as Miguel said, of paying the freight or not has to do with the probability of happening and the impact of happening. I'll give you an example. Miguel has a request of a transport of someone who only worked 2 or 3 times, but it's asking 10 freights that added cost $1,000. And Miguel has to think like this. What's the risk of me not receiving? Is it low or higher? Is it 1 or 5, right? Maybe he thinks that the risk of me not receiving is 3. It has quite a dimension, so probable, okay. But what is the impact of not receiving $1,000 in my organization? Well, Miguel will say, of course I will not be down because of this, which is a commercial interest of developing a new partnership versus the risk of losing $1,000. And maybe he thinks that his organization is able to hold a price of $1,000 and wants for the possibility of winning a new chain, a new circuit, a new client. What is he doing? It's an assessment of risk matrix in a simple way of probability of happening, impact, in case it happens. Usually, we have commercial bets here in which the risk of happening certain incidents has some expression, but the impact is low. For commercial reasons, we can decide to use different perspectives, low impact, but we have a high probability and high risk in the logistics decision. What can I do? We can put it in a rock of ice. No, okay, we are failed, we want to correspond, but we have not the capacity to answer. When you have a probability, a low probability of happening, that's risk. But if the impact, in case it happens, is high, we have a big problem here. Miguel accepts to transport something of $100,000, and the risk of not happening is low, but the impact of all those dollars, is it low or high? Of course, he will lose that business, because common sense, or will have a good insurance, of course. That's why there is insurance credit to correct that probability when we are facing a scenery of low risk regarding probability, but high impact in case of happening. And what you do is to try to mitigate the process. Yeah, but you can only have insurance when they are affected, right, Miguel? When the risk is high for us, if for the insurer it's high also, they will not insure that credit. And what should we do? Not accept it. Because if the insurer doesn't accept, why should we? Because those insurers also have other insurance companies behind them, so we need to clearly do exactly this. There are cases where we can try to mitigate the risk. We have the insurance, but if they don't accept, we will not have that risk. The logistic activity, as straightforward as our services, our production, our core business, is to have transport services when the risk is high. There is no possibility of transferring the risk, which is a possibility that we have of mitigating in case it happens. We need to stop that activity. But the problem is that many times we perform works and only then we have the idea and have the risk assessment. That's the other constraint. When is the risk assessment made? Please, Vasco, were you going to say something? There are situations where we can do it differently. It's not doing the service, but to ensure on the first service of someone who comes by parachute. We do the service, but you need to pay it in advance. If you want, okay. If you don't, if the client, okay, he accepts, it's someone that can be trusted on the first time, because okay, but I have no problems with it. That's one of the questions here. And it depends also on the volume of the values that we are speaking about. Of course, the impact, one thing is 1,000 euros and another is 10,000 euros. In half a year, I want to do 100 transportation containers that will receive 100. So 100,000 euros. Let's conclude the contract and you will pay me in ahead, 20%. It's a way of insuring something. Well, and today we need to work like this, because we look at the face, not at the heart, so we don't know exactly how people are. And this is a good contribution, right? Okay, so using this, we have our ship arcs. We have an introduction to the importance of risk analysis. Another important thing, which is the maturity of processes. We need to see how our suppliers are mature in their management. We need to make this question to our services, because in the logistical operators, we think that our services is capable of doing some things, and our internal services sometimes fail. the maturity in a freight forwarder and even in a customs broker, it's not the same. We can have sections that work well and others that simply don't. So if we are to measure the ability of service provision of all the company by the best effect, we are taking serious risk. Is that true? And you know, these are not your companies, of course, but you know companies in which the performance is uneven. We can have the reception of goods very good, but then the distribution is not good enough. So that's valid also for the freight forwarders or for the customs brokers. Sometimes the clients are taken care of and sometimes they're not. It has to do with production of service, but one thing that we need to understand is this is an important factor in the theme of today and tomorrow is to develop tools for continuous improvement. And continuous improvement is easy. Quantify and to map everything that are the processes and sub-processes of our activity and the activities that are composed. And to understand, to understand is to assess by quantifying the quality of service, which is a total cycle of logistics. It's made us adding small logistic circles of the process. I need to know that, for example, a business that involves the guarantees, how much time will that department take for that? If I have someone for a week, that must be concluded in 1 week, and it takes 1 week to be able to have the adequate guarantees, we are in the wrong business because the client will not wait for something that takes a week. We need to have units of the time control of each task, of each activity, of each sub-process and processes, because that's the only way to have the continuous improvement. And that is essential for what we see, because the competitive factor is not only the price of the bottle, it's the price of the water that's inside the bottle and of all the other costs that are fundamental in order that the raw materials to the final consumer, the cost will be the lowest possible, and that's only valid when we crush waste. And this theme of waste comes from the auto industry after the Second World War in Japan and the United States, that would identify that one of the causes of insuccess of companies' businesses is the waste that it's made at home. One of the wastes is time and defects. The question that I can do for those who are here is how many times in a process there is something that needs to be repeated. A guarantee, a second freight, a transportation document. How many times do you do something 2 times or 3 times the same thing? Did this happen to you before? Happens to you every day? It does. You know what that is? Is to throw money away, is to waste resources. And you need to understand why I need to ask 2 times the same thing, or someone is asking me the same things. Okay, but many times in that process, as a department, I'm going to fight forward. The client tells me it's a pallet with 500 kilograms. Tells me the dimension, but then the goods, the reception is completely different. I need to use different values, and I'm losing time doing that. How many times does that happen? You had clients that have repeated this many times, so what happened? We try to tell them, please, next time, try to give me a more accurate dimension. But in some clients, there is no result. Can we show them how much that costs? I know that to me, I lose a lot of time, but shouldn't we tell them how much does this cost? If we don't have, we can take to client A. We have client A. Now, this is the expectation, okay? But the pallet is this. And he repeats this 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 5 times. In each time, he has an hour of work more. Times 5, it's 5 hours, 250 euros. This is the additional work that we had. If we lose the client, it's a client that we have no interest in. I'm trying to provoke you. on purpose. I want to tell her that in our production chains, logistics personnel, we have a terrible defect. They think that we are not sympathetic, but what we have, it's a huge capacity and will of losing money. I'm not talking about ABUC, I'm talking about the sector. We have no input on the clients, their production errors. This doesn't happen in any other sector. We keep that problem with us because in Portugal, it's almost the same thing. We are afraid of competition. This competition does not make risk assessment because we don't also and will not see the history of the client. And we believe that the freight forwarder will come to our door because it has no competence and the client is never competent. But we need to be focused on the final client and we are not qualifying processes. Of course, that I'm saying this on purpose. I have 5 times. We need to show the client how much this cost us. So this took a long time to count, and I know about this. I had clients with the wrong measurements, so the product was kept for the next week. I had the same situation in which the dimensions were exactly the same. The truck was ordered in Italy. That could be to the side of the truck, but this was not possible. It would take more for coming in some areas of the truck and the other cargo that they would load. And I said, only next week, or you need to pay more. And the client told me, no, I need the things here in 2 or 3 days, and he paid for it. And he didn't ask for anything. But in Italy, that's how they work. Italy works like that. They did it since always. Okay, I will not take the slip anymore. I had 30 years in that sector. This is a typical problem of Portugal. In Europe, we win a lot of money in transport. Freight forwarders or even customs brokers, they win real money. But when we have the mistakes, German companies where I was in 05 and 06, I have thousands of clients. In Germany, we had 25 logistic platforms. Colgate, all the logistic management was from this company. Something didn't happen. A mistake is a mistake, either for my client or mine. It's analyzed with the same attention because it's an error in a logistics chain. Germans can be good in industry for different factors because they have the competition factor. A client does not want to throw the problem away saying that the problem is from my supplier, I don't care. He will not say that. The client knows if that repeats itself, the logistic solution, either it will be more expensive or someone will tell him, okay, I'm sorry, but we don't want to work with you anymore. Because there is an analysis cost-benefit for each client. And that's something that in the logistics challenge of Portugal doesn't happen, and it should. And Spain it doesn't happen also, which is the relation of cost-benefit with each client. There are clients that many times are the best clients in volume, but then we see profitability and we see that our clients are always paying for this one. I'm not saying that this happens in our companies, but it happens a lot on what is logistic process in Portugal. The maturity of our logistic process is very deficient. And it happened in some customs broker. It paid for an office and 20 or 30 clients that were there just only to bring work. They wouldn't pay the costs that they would generate, although they have the chart of payments that I know of them, and I know that it is what it is. So that question is very important. The maturity of logistic process must bring you to this question to see where is the response of each client. Sometimes we don't have enough clients to have charity. The client is to win money, and something that costs a lot to the Portuguese, for the Spanish and Italians doesn't to win money with clients because we think that the clients are our friends. They are not friends. They are not our friends. sometimes one becomes a friend because of this or that, but our clients are our clients. They are business partners, and they should be interested in the qualification of the process and in fixing the mistake, because if we have a client that continuously uh, brings errors in the dimension, we can have them a humor box, we can send them a box with a measuring tape. This is a gift. Maybe your measuring tape, there was a mouse that ate some of the centimeters. This is a joke, but we need to use humor also. Sometimes a strong play to exit the situation, because all of this is only bringing problems to the competitiveness of our industry. And if this happens in France, in Italy, because of someone far at a distance, this harms its productivity. No one thinks that a North American will accept that a client says something like this in FedEx. This doesn't happen. Do you think it does? Or in UPS? International matrix, international pattern, it's wrong, it's corrected. One of the rules that we had in the freight forwarders when I was in that activity, there was a right to recalculate the previous orders when it didn't have an agreement of the cubic meters, when it had 1, 2, or 3 cargo with with the wrong dimensions. We had a right to recalculate all the ones that we didn't verify, because it's a matter of trust. I worked in a company in Barraqueiro Group, one of the main companies in the area of transport of goods. And when we introduced pallet carriers with weight measures, I had a fusion of Fita Zero Uja here in Travessa do Barreiro. That storage started with 50-something doors. When we introduced the pallet carriers with weight measuring, they were paid in a week. Maybe 100, maybe 500 euros, a lot of money. They were paid for in a week, because our clients were always sending the wrong weight. They had the transport slip, 10 kilos, we would measure it, it would have 15, 16. So, well, it's only 5 kilos more.
During the first phase, we sent emails to our customers with all their recalculations, and we asked them what they wanted to do. Do you want to switch scales, or do we have to recalculate everything here? Of course, no customer contested what we said, and they understood that the lie was over. It was enough. Back then, by day, the worst day we had was about 60,000, I don't know how many tons. 10% of the correction was the difference between the loss and the result. That's how we made that difference. Well, that idea that customers get away of that, it's not actually true. The logistic industry should have a more competitive attitude and be responsible for improving and not deprecating the image. Otherwise, we're just animals eating our own flesh. For the customer to be able to drink champagne and eat caviar still. This question of the logistic process is well identified. This is a fundamental question, because we have to reduce costs, but not reduce costs. I'm sorry. In this way, as we say here, it's not reducing costs in our margin. It's not here. It's in the quality, in the time of the cycle that we have to make the difference. As we can see here, we have the service at the needed measure. We have a good relationship with the customers. It's not a good relationship just for the customer. It has to be good in providing the logistic service, so as to have the best logistic cost that we can and have the best service we can. Of course, in some moments, the companies have to understand if we're doing things right or wrong. So I've been around all the European and Brazilian and African markets, and clearly there's some things to notice. Well, in Angola, for example, to make a bottle of water, there's a lot of cost. Everything is much more expensive there because providing a service is very well paid there. It shouldn't be like that. Well, the market might be different as well. It might have been corrected meanwhile, but they don't manage to. The market can do it in moments of crisis, but in moments of abundance. But sometimes people forget when we have a lot of business that we need to make some corrections and just forget about it. One aspect that shows the importance of a good management of supply chain. There are several sectors that can win when they buy logistics services as a whole together. For example, an industry such the wine industry, for example, can win a lot by having independent producers if they associate not to a cooperative organization, but use an organization to buy machinery to make the harvest automatically, to use transport to be able to buy the bottles that each single producer is going to use to buy the paper. The management of the supply chain that each company does can bring the company to search for new paths because the paths that they use sometimes requires to find the good partners and the good cooperators that can improve their producing activity regarding what is not the business core, because each wine producer has to be distinctive by the price and the quality of the product and the image that it creates. And so there are subsidiary activities such as purchasing paper for the label, purchasing boxes for the packing, that are not distinctive of the product, and that if they are negotiated with 20 or 30 producers of Alentejo or Douro, they can create a great cost reduction when it comes to the bottle of wine that will reach the market in Lisbon, Porto, or even in Belgium, in England, or in Denmark. So here we have an ability to manage the supply chain of what is subsidiary materials by a set of wine producers. It can be an added value to their production. Most of the time they buy their boxes alone, and they don't care to know where they purchase the boxes, where they buy the cork littles, because they can find a prettier one, a less expensive one, for example. These are papers that can be much less expensive, boxes that can be less expensive. With the transport process, all of this could be much less expensive by distributing to great surfaces, by hiring someone who would go to the typical region of Douro, this typical region of Alentejo, and would collect the wine and deliver them. Well, do you think this happens in Portugal? Would that be a problem if this happened? Because this is the concept of collaborative logistics. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think that the car sector has management practices that have defects, that are incompetent? Do you think it's a sector that is globally and traditionally well managed? Well, we have to say that it is. Now think about it. How many of the things of Volvo, Renault, Peugeot, Citroën, BMW, Toyota are made in the same place? How many? The seats, the steering wheels, everything there is done in the same thing, but then go to a different assembler, isn't it? A car is originally, well, almost, when we speak about light consumption, the cars have a set of components, of materials, of accessories that their competitors will have as well. Now, the question is, the cars can do it, but the wine producers can do it. Can't they buy the packing boxes in the same supplier? Everyone buys from the same suppliers because digitization is so high that it has to be compensated by other elements. For example, the person who delivers the papers, do you believe that each company has its own paper delivery company? No, of course, they just want to have the papers on time. They have the same requirements. But if I buy the paper, the Vola, or Jogo, it doesn't matter. They all arrive at the same time, basically. The two newspapers, Jogo and Icon, are distributed by the same company. It's the same with Publicus and Novelties and other newspapers. So this has nothing to do with the providing of logistic services. There's a condition of equality so that my need of the paper is not conditioned by a lack of the product because the product is there, and so I'm able to value what I see on the cover of the newspaper. Either it is politics, either it's sports about Oporto or Benfica, the football club. But what's the difference? It's not the logistic service. It just takes some conditions for the final customer to choose. And the car sector does it, and the sector of newspaper distribution does it as well. It's the same in all of Europe. For example, we can have as well Figaro, Paris Match, French newspapers. They all have one or two distribution centrals that handle the whole distribution process everywhere. And this is collaborative logistics. We all know that the newspapers are all competitive. They all want to sell more than their competitors. And they're going to invest in the publicity and in reaching their customers. What I want to say here is that we have to understand that what are competitive advantages and advantages in the production process. In some markets, for example, the freight forwarders can also share some parts of the process in certain geographies. The same service works with several forwarders and with several custom brokers. These are all collaborative advantages. The more we are able to have advantages, the more we're going to be able to put the economy and the competitive capacity of each state and of each country and of each region and making stronger and in better conditions to compete with other regions of other geographies. Because competition is clearly a competition between geographies. Why? Because the resources are different, the technical skills are different, and the processes are very important. And they need that each component of the cost should have the weight that it should have, and we can't have too many malfunctions, too many waste, and it's very important already in the logic of management, and I think that someone was going to take a master's in this area. We have to take into account the rivalry between competitors, but also the power of the negotiable power of our suppliers, the threats to substitution product, and the newly formed company threat. When adapted to the logistic, we cannot put into question the capacity of collaborative action. Collaborating is an advantage, and when we must compete as well, so we have to be able to balance it out. What makes the difference here is the possibility to be different through the quality of our service, through the leadership in cost, or through a mix of these two solutions. So we have to find excellency in our own service providing in our role of producers of the agro-industry, for example. Our entry in the market also lives in this the differentiation, a different product, a differentiation because we innovate in the leadership in cost, or because of both. But no one can enter the market with an exceptional line if they don't have a good distribution. One is not enough. A bad logistic policy, a bad management of the supply chain can, because this management of the supply chain, whether it is bad with our suppliers of bottles, for example, or because we have bad carriers, it can compromise a great production. We don't have a good, and more in the 21st century, to have the good product in the good place is the first condition. To sell the good product in the good time, in the good place, at the good. So to have a good product is not enough of a competitive advantage. When the final customer will make the final choice, it implies that all the previous steps, more simple supplier product of support, for example, everyone has to understand that requirement, because what we have is a small bacteria that can contaminate the whole organization of the process, and we don't want that to happen, because we have a small bacteria at the beginning, and it can destroy completely the life of a country if it comes to that, as it happened with many epidemics and viruses. Does it make sense to you, the importance of the logistic chain? Of course, we'll have to evaluate the people who provide services in the roads, the ports, the railways, of course, the certificating agents, the customs, all of this in a need of the community that provides services and that lives from providing logistic services in the ports, and these people have to be picky in a way, and they have to be rigorous. Summarizing a bit, the competitive advantage originates in the value that the company is capable to create for the clients, and the strategic management being the assembly of objective decisions and actions aimed at assuring the competitive advantage maintained for the future. We introduce here an important factor that is what is derived from the maintenance. We need to have some punctual competitive advantages. They can be punctual, they have to last. We need to understand how we are going in a prolonged and sustained way to have advantageous strategies, basically, and see how in the service we can see the evolution of the maturity of the product, if we are in a good phase of maturity or if we are in a critical phase. And we have to take into account if we still have interest in the market, if we're still in, or if we need campaigns, for example, to lower the cost. We have to understand when we sell a case of mushrooms, for example, at an exceptional price. If it's going to sell with great promotions and great campaigns, it works for several products. So competitiveness factors that globalization favors and highlights: innovation and creativity, ability to investigate and to develop, master the new technology, master the strategic technology, and a good administration. Did you notice that we mentioned good administration before? That is good courts, that is good policies. It's very important in a good port operation to have a good administration, not only in the port installations, but also in the areas that create access to this area. This is a factor that can lead to the decision-making process to define whether we're going to go to Leishweiss, to Aveiro, to this, and it's all competitiveness. But there's also external competitiveness. For example, 25 years ago, when you wanted to have a customs action, whether it was a verification or another action, we had to bring money to be able to give 50 or 100 all Portuguese escudos to have the stamp on it. That was how things were done. The verifiers had a very busy schedule with brokers and freight forwarders, and so they would go to lunch at noon and come back at 4, because all of this had to do with was going to be paid to them. Vasco, am I saying something wrong here? No, you're not. Well, this is this is how things were because I lived it for several years. There's something that I have here since I was 25 years old, up to 47 years old. I've always been in these areas, so fortunately I saw how things evolved, but I saw how they were. Nothing was done in the customs. We had to make donations at every single step of the way, depending on the post of the position of the verifier in question. I'm sorry, we can only translate what is being said. Well, I'm in the forwarding part and George in the customs part. The company has been existing for 40 years. George has been here for 2 or 2.5 years. I've been there for 6 years. I've been in a completely different area, and that's why I gave the example of graphic companies, because I've been in this business for 17 years. But I know because my father used to tell it to us at home. Yes, the customs brokers would leave filled with money basically, and then they had to fill in the information. Of course, fortunately, this changed, and the country changed a lot. But it happened a lot. So the good administration is, of course, a very important factor, as important as, of course, the mastering the technology. In our industry of logistics services, in the supply chain management, everything that points to automatization, management of information, whether more or less reliable, is always a great advantage. Other important success factors, we have the ability to, the ability to cooperate in competition, the safety, the literacy and the training of the workers, the mobility and flexibility, qualified human resources, infrastructures, good systems of justice, and all of this is very important. When great companies try to just stay somewhere, they have to think about this. When IKEA came in the northern area of Portugal, they took into account a series of parameters where the facilities in the logistics field were highly valued, such as social keys, the quality of the professionals, the training. There's a series of factors, logistics, and supply chain management combined with this. The supply management, the logistics, supply chain management in a company such as IKEA, for example, in Barcelona, is the result of an assessment of good possibilities of good flow in the production, in an easiness of the expedition of this goods, and of course the quality of the workforce, the experience, the master of the technology, and the easiness of collaborating with the authorities, so to say. Well, of course, besides having important things that are the quantity of the quantity of persons that work now in some areas. Barcelona, for example, has a great level of training. I believe that now they work in a different pole, yes, in Braga, and they're going to open IKEA in Algarve as well, and I think they want to open it in Seville as well. So they're growing more and more. I would just like to ask you to pay particular attention to this point, that is the capacity to manage information, physical and financial flux along thousands of kilometers. This is the factor of competition that has to do with the process of supply chain management, and that ensures it. Just to give you two or three more elements, we have here an evolution of the logistics during the last years. But logistics has known a great growth since the Second World War, and tomorrow we're going to start by speaking about it. But I'd like you to highlight the last phase of the logistics, where there is a separation between operation and internal logistics and physical distribution. These are distinct things that are connected, but they then evolve for us to have an activity of procurement of processes of suppliers and service providers. Then the operations and internal logistics connected to physical distribution. But we have to have a complete vision of the process. Where we are now, or where we should be, is here. In any production process, there should be our suppliers, the internal and external process of service providers, the logistics, the physical distribution, and of course the final client, because the real client of all these people is the person who is going to go to the supermarket or to the store to buy a pair of pants. And when he's not satisfied with that pair of pants, this can be a problem for us suppliers who are here. We're all involved in this process. But more, we have to understand this. Globalization implies specialization and logistic management, because specialization occurs at a global scale. And for it to be efficient, for it to have a benefit for the consumers and for the investors as well, it's necessary to have a specialization of logistics in the different processes, and this is done through the management of the supply chain in logistics. Makes sense to you? And we started the afternoon asking what was logistics. So it's the part of the supply chain process which plans, implements, and controls in an efficient manner the fluxes of goods, warehousing services, and relating information from the point of origin up to the end consumption point in accordance to the client's needs. Do you agree with this definition? George? And can still be a little bit complemented with this vision of what is the supply chain.
See, we have suppliers of suppliers, direct clients, and clients from the clients. And this can be amplified even quality, competitiveness. There's each one of the relation of each people that can be established, and within each supplier it can be efficient with a small number of errors as possible, with a smaller number of things that they ask us to do something that we are waiting for someone to do what must be made. Competitiveness results on this. We think that competitiveness is a result of a great error, of a great fail, but we all have a tendency to see that the error of the others is big and that our mistake has no expression. It was only once, and it has not a lot of impact. The fault is not from the others. It's always from the others and never ours. Last, this is the matrix that was drawn up by the Logistic Council of the United Kingdom, in which it sets management in 5 steps. In planning, deliver, supply and do, and the return. This involves all the stakeholders, all that we can call all clients and their clients, suppliers and their suppliers. Okay? trying to explain this better. Plan for planning, source for supply, deliver for make, and R from return, which is the return either of transport material, documents, or financial, okay? 5 fundamental stages of the supply chain. To plan, to work with suppliers, to deliver, and to return. Okay, does this make sense? We need to understand that errors and constraints we have in this process, okay? Is this clear? Questions? Any question? So let's stop for a little. I know that some of you need to go. And then some questions, and those who are here, and those who doesn't, we are here tomorrow, okay?